Welcome, dear traveler, to Story Planet, where magical tales come to life and cozy memories unfold with every word. Today, we're embarking on a special journey together, a Christmas trip to Grandma's cottage, where the snow is always fresh, the fire crackles warmly, and the love of family makes everything just a little bit brighter. Picture yourself nestled in a car with Tom, Sara, Ben, and Mia winding through snowy fields toward the welcoming arms of Grandma Elizabeth. Join us as we decorate the tree, share heartwarming stories by the fire, and celebrate the magic of Christmas in a place where the spirit of the season fills every corner. So, grab your favorite blanket, settle in, and let the warmth of this holiday tale wrap around you like a comforting embrace. A cozy Christmas at Grandma's cottage. The house was buzzing with excitement the night before the big Christmas trip. Tom and Sara's home was small, cozy, and always filled with warmth. But the energy that night was something special. Boxes of Christmas cookies were stacked on the counter, suitcases lined the hallway, and a snowstorm swirled outside, painting the windows in frosty patterns. The tree in their living room sparkled with soft, golden lights, casting a festive glow that danced across the walls. Tom stood at the kitchen counter, carefully checking the road map on his phone one last time, though he already knew the way by heart. His glasses rested on the tip of his nose, and a faint smile played on his lips as he thought about the day ahead. Sara bustled about, her hands a blur as she made sure everything was packed and ready. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, a few strands framing her face as she hummed an old Christmas carol softly to herself. In the living room, Ben and Mia could hardly sit still. They had just finished setting out their little piles of presents for Grandma Elizabeth, wrapped in crinkled paper and decorated with stickers and ribbons they'd found around the house. Every few minutes, Mia would get up to peek out the window, hoping to see the snow starting to pile up even higher. Ben, though older by a couple of years, wasn't much better at containing his excitement. His legs bounced restlessly, and he kept fiddling with the new scarf his mother had knitted for him. "Do you think Grandma has already started decorating?" Mia asked, for the third time that evening, her voice high with excitement. Tom, overhearing from the kitchen, called back, "If I know your Grandma, she's probably already got the whole cottage looking like a Christmas wonderland." Mia's eyes sparkled at the thought. "I can't wait to see the big tree, and the lights outside, and the—" "Hold your horses, Mia," Ben interrupted with a grin. "We'll be there soon enough." He leaned over to grab one of the pillows from the couch and hugged it to his chest. "It's just one more night." "Yeah, one long night," Mia pouted, curling up beside him. "I'm too excited to sleep." "I know the feeling," Sara said as she came into the room, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "But you both need to try. We've got a long day of driving ahead of us tomorrow. But we're not sleepy, they chorused together, their voices bright with determination. Sara just smiled, knowing from experience that they'd wear themselves out soon enough. "Tell you what," she said, crouching down beside them. "Why don't we pick out a Christmas story to read before bed? That might help calm you down." The suggestion worked like a charm. In no time, the kids were scampering to the bookshelf, pulling out their favorite holiday stories. Ben selected the Polar Express, while Mia chose the Nutcracker. Tom joined them, settling into the armchair by the fireplace with a chuckle. "Looks like we're doing a double feature tonight." As Sara read the stories aloud, the crackling fire and soft glow of the Christmas lights created a cozy, magical atmosphere. Even the snowstorm outside seemed to soften, as if joining them in their quiet Christmas preparations. Slowly but surely, Mia's head began to droop, and Ben's eyes fluttered closed. The excitement of the day was giving way to the calm anticipation of tomorrow. The next morning, the house was alive again, this time with the sounds of hurried footsteps, rustling coats, and the click of suitcases being wheeled toward the door. The storm had passed overnight, leaving behind a pristine blanket of snow that shimmered under the rising sun. The sky was a pale pink, the kind of winter morning that feels crisp and full of promise. Tom and Sara double-checked everything before heading out, making sure not to forget the small but precious gifts they had prepared for Grandma Elizabeth. These gifts were always handmade, a tradition Sara had started when Ben was just a baby. This year, she and the kids had crafted little jars of peppermint-scented bath salts and jars of homemade cranberry jam, decorated with ribbons and sprigs of rosemary. "Ready, gang?" Tom asked, pulling on his thick winter coat and patting his pockets for the car keys. "Ready," Ben and Mia shouted in unison, bounding toward the door with more energy than Tom had expected for so early in the morning. With a final check of the locks and a glance at the snow-covered yard, the family piled into their car. The engine hummed to life, and they set off down the winding roads that led out of town, bound for Grandma's cottage, nestled deep in the snowy countryside. The journey to Grandma Elizabeth's cottage was always a special part of their Christmas tradition. The road twisted and turned through peaceful forests and open fields, passing small towns where people waved from porches decorated with Christmas lights. It wasn't a particularly long drive, just a few hours, but it was enough to feel like they were traveling to a whole different world. Mia pressed her nose against the cold window, her breath fogging up the glass as she watched the snow-covered landscape fly by. "Look, Ben," she said, pointing at a distant field where a family of deer stood grazing in the snow. "Do you think Grandma will have reindeer at her house this year?" Ben laughed. "Not real ones, Mia, but she'll probably have some decorations that look like them. Remember last year's sleigh? Oh, yeah. Mia's eyes lit up with the memory of the old wooden sleigh that Grandma had set up in the front yard, surrounded by twinkling lights and reindeer cutouts. I loved that. Tom glanced in the rearview mirror, smiling at their conversation. We'll be there before you know it, he said. But first, how about we take a little break? There's a rest stop up ahead with a great view of the hills. We can stretch our legs and have some hot cocoa. Sara turned in her seat to look at the kids. What do you think? Cocoa break? Ben and Mia didn't need to be asked twice. Yes, please, they chimed. Tom pulled the car off the main road onto a small turnout that overlooked a wide, snow-covered valley. The hills in the distance rolled softly, blanketed in white, and the sun shimmered off the snow, making the whole scene feel like something out of a dream. They parked near a wooden bench that had been dusted with snow, and Sara quickly pulled out the thermos of hot cocoa she had packed, along with a bag of Sarah's homemade gingerbread cookies. The air was crisp but refreshing, and they breathed it in deeply as they sipped the steaming cocoa. Ben, ever the adventurous one, ran to the edge of the clearing to throw snowballs into the open field, watching them disappear into the untouched snow. This is beautiful, Sara said softly to Tom, linking her arm through his as they watched the kids play. It always feels like Christmas really starts when we're on our way to your mom's. Tom smiled, nodding. Yeah, there's something about this place. It's like it never changes, no matter how much time passes. After a short break, they piled back into the car, ready for the final leg of the trip. As the landscape shifted from open fields to snow-covered forests, the kids began singing Christmas carols. Their voices filled the car, warming the air despite the cold outside. Just as dusk began to fall, the car turned onto a narrow, winding road lined with tall pines dusted in snow. At the end of the road stood Grandma Elizabeth's cottage, its stone walls weathered by time, but still as sturdy and welcoming as ever. The roof was covered in a thick layer of snow, and the windows glowed warmly from within, illuminated by the soft light of candles and twinkling Christmas lights. There it is, Mia cried, bouncing in her seat as the familiar sight of Grandma's cottage came into view. We're here. Tom parked the car in front of the cottage, and before he could even turn off the engine, the front door opened, and there stood Grandma Elizabeth, wrapped in a thick knitted shawl. Her silver hair peeked out from beneath a woolen cap, and her face, though weathered with age, was lit up with a joyful smile. Welcome, welcome, she called out, her voice as warm as ever. Ben and Mia scrambled out of the car, racing toward her and wrapping their arms around her in a big hug. Grandma, they shouted in unison, their excitement overflowing. Oh, my darlings, Grandma Elizabeth said, hugging them tightly. Look how much you've grown. Come in, come in. I've been waiting for you. Tom and Sara followed behind, carrying the bags and gifts, their faces bright with the same warmth that always accompanied their arrival here. Inside the cottage, the familiar scent of cinnamon, pine, and fresh-baked cookies filled the air. The fireplace crackled in the hearth, casting a golden glow across the room, and the large Christmas tree in the corner stood proudly, its branches waiting to be adorned with decorations. "Did you save the decorating for us, Grandma?" Mia asked hopefully, her eyes wide as she stared at the tree. "Of course I did, sweetheart," Grandma Elizabeth said with a wink. "Wouldn't be Christmas without my little elves to help me, now would it?" That evening, they all gathered around the tree, unpacking boxes of ornaments that had been collected over the years. Each decoration told a story. There were hand-painted baubles that Tom and his sisters had made when they were children, delicate glass ornaments that had been passed down from Elizabeth's mother, and even some new additions that Ben and Mia had made in recent years. As they worked, Grandma Elizabeth told stories about each ornament, her voice soft but rich with memory. "This one here," she said, holding up a small wooden reindeer. "Your father carved this when he was just about your age, Ben. Took him hours, but he was determined to make it perfect." Ben grinned, proud to be following in the footsteps of his father's childhood creativity. After the tree was dressed in ornaments, lights, and tinsel, they turned off the other lights in the room and stood back to admire their work. The Christmas tree glowed softly, casting shadows that danced across the walls. It was a sight that filled them all with a quiet joy, the kind that makes you feel like everything in the world is just as it should be. Later, they gathered by the fireplace, sipping hot chocolate and wrapped in cozy blankets. Grandma Elizabeth, as she did every year, began to tell her famous Christmas stories. Some of the stories were about her childhood, Christmases long ago, when the snow seemed deeper, the nights quieter, and the world just a little bit more magical. "Did I ever tell you about the Christmas when I was a little girl?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with the spark of memory. Ben and Mia shook their heads eagerly. "Well," she began, her voice taking on that familiar nostalgic tone. "It was during a particularly snowy winter. My sisters and I had to trudge through snow that came up to our waists just to get to town. But that Christmas was special because it was the year my father, your great-great-grandfather, carved a beautiful wooden sleigh for us. We didn't have much, but that sleigh was the most wonderful gift I could have ever imagined. We spent all Christmas Day riding down the hill near our house. It was the best day ever." Mia's eyes were wide with wonder. "Do you still have the sleigh, Grandma?" "I do," she said with a smile. "It's in the shed. Maybe tomorrow, if the snow keeps up, we'll take it for a spin." Ben looked at his sister, and they both grinned in anticipation of tomorrow's adventure. As the evening grew later, the family settled into their Christmas Eve traditions. Grandma Elizabeth pulled out a well-worn copy of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and as the fire crackled in the hearth, she read the familiar words with a quiet, comforting rhythm. The children, though still excited for the day ahead, began to feel the weight of sleep tugging at their eyelids. Ben leaned his head against his mother's shoulder, and Mia curled up in her father's lap, their minds drifting in and out of the cozy dream world that Grandma's voice wove for them. After the story, they all hung their stockings by the fireplace. Soft, knitted stockings that Grandma had made by hand for each of them. Ben and Mia's were decorated with reindeer and snowflakes, while Tom and Sarah's were a rich, deep red with gold trim. The stockings hung in a neat row, waiting for the magic of Christmas morning. Tom and Sara took the sleepy children upstairs to bed, tucking them in with promises of the fun they would have the next day. "Sleep tight," Sara whispered, kissing Mia's forehead. "Santa will be here soon." Mia, her voice barely a whisper, replied, "I can't wait for tomorrow." Christmas Day. Celebrations. Christmas morning dawned crisp and bright, with fresh snow blanketing the ground outside the windows. Ben and Mia woke up early, racing downstairs to see if Santa had visited. Sure enough, their stockings were full, and a pile of presents sat under the tree, wrapped in shimmering paper and tied with ribbons. "Look at all the presents," Mia gasped, her eyes wide with delight. The family gathered around the tree, taking turns opening their gifts. There were toys for Ben and Mia, a set of wooden building blocks for Ben, and a dollhouse for Mia, complete with tiny furniture and dolls. Tom and Sara exchanged thoughtful gifts as well. Tom had given Sara a beautiful handmade scarf, and Sara had surprised Tom with a leather-bound journal for his writing. But perhaps the most special gift was the one from Grandma Elizabeth. For each of them, she had made something by hand: an embroidered handkerchief for Sara, a set of hand-carved wooden animals for Ben and Mia, and for Tom, a beautifully detailed wooden clock, a project she had been working on for months. "Thank you, Grandma," they all said, touched by the love and care she had put into each gift. After the excitement of opening presents, they sat down to a hearty breakfast of pancakes, bacon, and fresh fruit. The smell of sizzling bacon and syrup filled the air, and the kitchen was alive with the sound of laughter and conversation. Later, they bundled up in their warmest clothes and headed outside to try out the old wooden sleigh that Grandma had kept all these years. The hill near the cottage was perfect for sledding, and Ben and Mia spent hours racing up and down the snowy slope, their laughter ringing through the crisp winter air. A peaceful Christmas dinner. By the time the sun began to set, the family had gathered back inside the cozy cottage, ready for Christmas dinner. The table was set with Grandma Elizabeth's finest china, and the centerpiece was a beautiful wreath of pine branches, red berries, and candles. The roast turkey, mashed potatoes, and Grandma's famous cranberry sauce filled the air with mouth-watering scents. They sat down to eat, the conversation lively but warm, as they shared stories of the day and memories of Christmases past. As they finished their meal, Grandma Elizabeth raised her glass of sparkling cider, her eyes shining with love and pride. "To family," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion, "and to many more Christmases just like this." They all raised their glasses, clinking them together in a toast. To family. After dinner, they sat by the fire once more, the soft glow of the flames casting a peaceful light around the room. The snow outside fell gently, and the world seemed quiet and still, wrapped in the soft blanket of Christmas night. Ben yawned, leaning his head on Grandma's shoulder, and Mia soon followed, curling up in her mother's lap. Tom and Sara exchanged a look, one filled with contentment and the quiet understanding that this, right here, was what Christmas was all about. Being together, sharing love and warmth, and creating memories that would last a lifetime. As the snow continued to fall softly outside, the family sat together in peaceful silence, the warmth of the day settling deep into their hearts. It was a Christmas filled with laughter, stories, and love. A perfect day at Grandma Elizabeth's cottage, wrapped in the quiet joy of the season. As the fire crackled softly and the snow continued to fall in gentle flurries outside, the warmth and quiet of the evening wrapped around the family like a cozy blanket. Their hearts were full, and the joy of the day settled into a calm, contented peace. One by one, they all began to drift off. Tom with his arm around Sara, Mia curled up next to Ben, and Grandma Elizabeth smiling softly as she gazed at the glowing tree. The cottage was filled with the magic of Christmas, and as the last embers flickered in the hearth, they all slipped into a sweet, peaceful sleep, dreaming of the love and warmth they shared that day. Thank you for joining us on this heartwarming journey to Grandma's cottage on Story Planet. We hope you felt the magic, love, and joy of the holiday season in every moment shared with Tom, Sara, Ben, Mia, and Grandma Elizabeth. If you enjoyed this cozy trip, you may consider liking, sharing, and subscribing so we can bring you along on even more enchanting adventures. Until next time, may the warmth of this Christmas story stay with you wherever you are.